The story opens with Althia, a well-known academic, flying to Istanbul to deliver a series of lectures, unaware that the trip is about to disrupt her sense of reality. As she exits the airport, a strange, oddly radiant, short-statured man suddenly appears, insistently helping with her luggage, leaving her deeply unsettled. Before she can react, her friends arrive and whisk her away, but even inside the car, Althia can't stop thinking about the unsettling stranger and tries to describe him, only to be met with confusion and jokes about Istanbul being a city of jinns and myths. After a long journey, she reaches the venue where she and her colleagues present a seminar on global natural disasters to a packed audience, highlighting her reputation and influence. Everything feels normal until, mid-lecture, Althia senses someone watching her with an intensity that feels inhuman, as if the figure staring at her is less a man and more a nightmare-given shape. Suddenly, the figure lunges toward her, triggering such overwhelming panic that she collapses unconscious, forcing her friends to rush her away. It is then revealed that Althia suffers from a condition where she sees things no one else can, visions that blur the line between perception and delusion, something she herself believes is an illness she can no longer control. The next day, hoping to distract her mind, she wanders through Istanbul and stumbles upon an ancient antique shop filled with relics of forgotten eras, where a peculiar old bottle catches her attention. The shopkeeper claims the bottle mysteriously releases blood and hypes it as something supernatural, but Althia dismisses the tale as superstition, though her academic curiosity refuses to let go of the idea. Driven by a desire to test the impossible, she buys the bottle and takes it back to her hotel. After showering, her thoughts keep circling back to the artifact, and instead of focusing on her research, she decides to clean it. The moment she twists open the lid, an eerie force spills out, appearing like a living surge of energy that expands before her eyes, eventually revealing itself as a jinn, massive and otherworldly, freed after centuries of confinement. Althia assumes this is just another hallucination and calmly ignores it, stunning the jinn, who cannot comprehend why she isn't terrified like everyone before her. As he explores the room, his attention locks onto the television, and it becomes clear he has been trapped in the bottle for ages, completely disconnected from the modern world. When a video of Albert Einstein appears on the screen, the jinn mistakenly believes Althia is a powerful witch who has imprisoned the great mind inside a glowing box, prompting him to try to free Einstein, until Althia explains that it's all the result of science, and that the television itself is nothing more than another invention born from it. She begins explaining invisible energy fields in scientific terms, but the entity cuts her off, claiming he has always understood such forces because his own existence is shaped by them. Curious now, he studies her and asks why she didn't scream or run when she saw him. Althia answers with blunt honesty, saying she's an academic who long ago stopped trusting her own senses. As a child, a devastating accident erased her entire family, and the silence that followed nearly destroyed her. To survive it, her mind learned to invent company, a boy she could summon and dismiss at will, until imagination became a refuge she relied on too deeply. Over the years, that refuge turned unstable, filling her world with visions that felt disturbingly real, which is why she dismissed the jinn as just another trick of her fractured perception. Instead of being offended, he finds her explanation strangely compelling and, with a confidence that borders on arrogance, announces that he owes her 3 fulfilled desires. Still unconvinced, Althia watches as he casually reshapes himself into a man and floods the room with food in a blink, a display so effortless that doubt finally begins to crack. Driven by curiosity rather than fear, she presses him for answers, asking how a being of his scale could ever be trapped inside something so small and how long he had been imprisoned. The jinn settles into storytelling, revealing that his purpose has always been tied to granting human wishes and that he was once mortal himself, a man with 2 legs and a heart capable of love. Centuries ago, he was closely connected to Queen Sheba and fell hopelessly for her, a claim Althia immediately challenges, reminding him of the legend that bound Sheba to King Solomon. He doesn't deny it, instead insisting that Sheba had been drawn to him first, until Solomon arrived bearing a strange instrument whose music bent minds and rewrote desire. Through sorcery disguised as melody, Solomon stole her devotion, discovered their secret bond, and responded with fury, sealing the jinn inside a bottle and ordering it cast into the sea. For endless years, he remained trapped in darkness, clawing at freedom that never came, until chance finally broke his prison. As he finishes, Althia realizes her thoughts drifting back to the promise of 3 wishes, now sounding far less like fantasy and far more like temptation. Before allowing the conversation to turn toward wishes and consequences, she stops him and asks something that feels far more dangerous than magic itself, wanting to know what a woman's heart genuinely longs for when everything else is stripped away. He reacts with a wry, almost embarrassed laugh, confessing that he has always been a complete failure when it comes to understanding love, as if every emotional gamble he has ever taken ended in loss. Then, turning the question on her, he asks whether she has ever truly loved someone. The inquiry unsettles her, yet she answers honestly, recalling a relationship from her university days with a man named Jack, a love that once felt promising until she realized he was emotionally divided, involved with another woman at the same time. Rather than remain trapped in uncertainty, she chose to leave, even though the decision cost her more than she ever admitted aloud. As she reflects on it, a quiet discomfort grows. She begins to wonder why an ancient being, bound to wishes and legends, is reaching into such personal territory. That unease awakens memories of an old story she once read, a warning passed down through generations that those who accepted jinn's gifts often gain what they ask for but lose something far more important in the process, leaving happiness forever just out of reach. Althia hesitated, then asked the jinn if it was possible that she might simply refuse to make any wish at all. The moment the words left her lips, she noticed a flicker of pain ripple through him, his form almost trembling, and instinctively she realized that some wish would inevitably have to be made. Denial was not an option. But before committing to anything, she wanted to hear the rest of his story, to understand the centuries he had endured. He began recounting how, over the long years trapped in the bottle, layers of dust, sand, and grime had built up around him, hardening the vessel into something like stone, which eventually washed ashore. One day, a man discovered the bottle and tucked it into a hollow in a palace wall, where it remained hidden for years. Then came Golton, a young woman who climbed the wall to secretly catch a glimpse of her crush, Prince Mustafa. In her excitement, she slipped, and the bottle tumbled down with her. The stone casing cracked on impact, landing the bottle in her hands and freeing him at last. The sight of the enormous jinn terrified Golton, and she fainted. When she recovered and learned he could grant 3 wishes, she immediately asked for her first. She wished to marry Prince Mustafa, the son of King Solomon. To honor her wish, the jinn transformed her into a woman of extraordinary beauty, almost like a fairy, and subtly enchanted Mustafa's heart so that he would love her in return. Once that was done, he and Golton carefully hid the bottle together to ensure no one else could find it. For centuries afterward, the jinn remained within the palace, bound invisibly, unable to interact with the world beyond. Then, years later, Golton returned with her second wish. She wanted to become the mother of Mustafa's child. But even as this unfolded, danger loomed. King Solomon's second wife, consumed with jealousy and ambition, was quietly manipulating the king against his stepson Mustafa, sowing seeds of tension and threat that would affect them all. He explains that Mustafa's stepmother harbored a deep, venomous hatred for him, constantly whispering lies and manipulations into King Solomon's ear until the king himself began to view his son's behavior as insufferable. Blinded by his wife's schemes, Solomon eventually ordered Mustafa's death, a decision that would forever alter the fates of those involved. Meanwhile, Golton had grown arrogant and entitled, seeing herself as a queen in every sense and treating everyone around her with disdain, convinced that the jinn's presence made her untouchable. One day, the jinn asked her what her final wish would be. Confident and proud, she told him she had everything she could ever want and would reveal her last wish later. But at that moment, the jinn revealed the terrible truth, that King Solomon had already sent men to kill Mustafa. Hearing this, Golton descended into hysteria, running frantically through the palace halls, tears streaming down her face, unable to comprehend the sudden catastrophe. The jinn chased after her, repeatedly asking her to share her final wish, desperate to honor it before it was too late. Then, suddenly, a magical creature appeared, appearing almost out of thin air, and warned him that no one can ever be forced to make a wish. Even a jinn cannot compel desire, wishes must be given freely. The jinn continues, recounting the tragic turn of events. Just as chaos erupted, palace soldiers arrived and, in a cruel act, seized Golton and threw her into the water. By the time he was able to pull her out, it was too late. She had already perished. Her third wish would never be granted, and as a result, he became trapped in the palace, invisible and alone. No one else could see him. He wandered the halls endlessly, trying to communicate with anyone, but his presence went unnoticed for years. It wasn't until Prince Murad came of age that the jinn was finally sensed again. Guiding Murad to the hidden spot where the bottle had been kept, he witnessed the prince and his brother discover it. However, before they could act further, their mother appeared, reclaiming the bottle and taking it away. The jinn explains that after King Solomon died, young Murad was crowned king. Despite the weight of his new responsibilities, his life was dominated by battles and warfare, yet he still retained the rare ability to sense the jinn's presence. The jinn recalls Murad's brother, Ibrahim, as the complete opposite, lazy, indulgent, and indifferent to duty, living a life of ease and pleasure. This stark contrast fueled Murad's resentment toward him. During Murad's youth, a storyteller used to entertain him with tales, and the jinn would listen alongside the prince. But when that storyteller passed away, Murad descended into madness, for those stories had been his only source of joy. With Murad lost to grief, their mother placed Ibrahim on the throne, further complicating the fate of the kingdom. And it was during this fragile period of power struggles that the bottle remained hidden, waiting for fate to bring it into human hands once more. The jinn's tale grows darker and more intricate as he recounts the next chapter of his long, restless existence. After decades of confinement, fate intervened in a strange, almost comical way. Ibrahim's maid, a woman of considerable girth, was bathing near the hidden bottle when she inadvertently struck it. The impact was enough to shatter the vessel, and the jinn immediately emerged, vast and imposing, his form radiating energy that made the room tremble. Following the rules of his centuries-old existence, he asked the startled woman to make her 3 wishes. But the suddenness of his appearance, combined with his sheer size and power, terrified her beyond reason. Panicked, she begged him to return to the bottle, and, bound by the mystical laws that governed his being, he had no choice but to comply. With a resigned sigh, he re-entered the bottle, and the maid hastily sealed it before throwing it back into the sea, trapping him once again in a prison of glass and water. The story then returns to the present, where Althia struggles with her own indecision, still unsure of what wish she should dare to ask. Seeking to understand the consequences of a wish and the weight of centuries of magic, she presses the jinn to tell her more about what happened after his previous captivities. He recounts that many years later, the bottle resurfaced in an even stranger way, reaching the hands of a young girl named Zephr, just 10 years old. Zephr's childhood had been robbed from her. She had been forced into an arranged marriage with a much older, wealthy businessman, a man indifferent to her feelings and entirely focused on control and appearances. She was profoundly unhappy, trapped in a life she never wanted. The jinn explains that destiny often works in the most unusual ways. One day, the bottle containing him was discovered inside the belly of a fish, a bizarre accident of the sea. Zephr's husband, either ignorant or careless, brought the fish home and, without knowing its true contents, gave it to Zephr as a gift. In the innocence and curiosity of youth, Zephr opened the gift and unwittingly freed the jinn, releasing centuries of magic and energy into her small hands. For the first time in countless years, the jinn was free, yet he was at the mercy of someone so young and inexperienced, someone who could alter his fate entirely with a single wish. The enormity of it all, the fragility of life and magic intertwined, left him both exhilarated and cautious, knowing that this small girl now held the power to shape centuries of consequence. The jinn's story continued to unfold in vivid detail. When he asked Zephr what she wished for first, she surprised him by asking for knowledge. Her thirst for learning was insatiable. She wanted to understand everything she could. Once the jinn granted her wish, her newfound knowledge allowed her to invent countless things, transforming her world and expanding her mind in ways no ordinary child could. Curious, he then asked for her second wish. Zephr's response was precise and ambitious. She wanted to be able to solve every math problem she encountered. The jinn granted this wish as well, and it opened the door for her to study and manipulate complex concepts, eventually leading her to explore and understand the secrets of the electromagnetic field. Her experiments became increasingly ambitious. She began applying her knowledge to manipulate and place objects within electromagnetic forces, testing the limits of what she could control. During this time, the jinn realized he had fallen in love with Zephr. He didn't want her to use her final wish recklessly, for fear it might trap him again or cause unforeseen consequences. But Zephr's hunger for knowledge and understanding only grew stronger. Naturally, she began to move toward using her last wish. Seeing this, the jinn acted decisively, stopping her in her tracks. His intervention angered her at first. She didn't understand why he was interfering with her life. Frustrated yet bound by duty, the jinn returned himself to the bottle, removing himself from her immediate reach, and waited, leaving Zephr to continue her journey of discovery. It would be many years before he would cross paths with someone who could understand him fully again, Althia. Returning to the present scene, after hearing the jinn's extraordinary and century-spanning story, Althia finally had clarity. With all the history, wisdom, and love behind him, she now understood exactly what she wanted, and what wish she would dare to make. She looks at him with a calm clarity that surprises even herself and tells him that through his story, she understood the one truth he kept circling without admitting, that his love for Zephr had been genuine, selfless, and painfully human. She says she doesn't want wealth, control, or forbidden knowledge. What she wants is to be loved with the same honesty and intensity he once gave her, because beneath every fear and every scar, a woman's heart ultimately longs for connection. The jinn, ancient and weary from centuries of loss, doesn't argue or bargain. He simply accepts the wish and leans in, sealing it with a kiss that feels less like magic and more like a promise. In that moment, the hollow loneliness Althia has carried since childhood finally loosens its grip, replaced by a warmth she thought she'd lost forever, and she allows herself to be happy without questioning it. Time passes quietly until Althia tells him she must return to London, and without protest, he folds himself back into the small bottle so he can travel with her. At the airport, anxiety tightens her chest as security checks begin, the bottle resting in her bag, but no alarms sound and no officers notice anything unusual, allowing them to pass unnoticed and land safely in London. Once there, the djinn remarks that the city feels very different from Istanbul, explaining that the electromagnetic environment is stronger and more chaotic, something his energy-based existence immediately senses. Radio waves and television signals ripple through him constantly, affecting his body in ways that leave him unsettled and strained. Watching him struggle makes Althia uneasy, but he reassures her gently, saying he will learn to adapt to the new frequencies over time. Their bond deepens as days go by, yet beneath his affection, the djinn begins to weaken, pain quietly spreading through him, something he deliberately hides from Althia, unwilling to burden her with the cost of loving him. One evening, Althia discovers him in the basement, and the moment freezes her in place. His once stable form is unraveling, his body breaking into shimmering fragments as if the energy holding him together is quietly collapsing. He's unable to speak, barely able to focus, and the sight fills her with a sharp, helpless fear she hasn't felt in years. Acting on instinct rather than thought, she immediately uses her second wish, demanding that he talk to her, that he stay present. The wish takes effect instantly, restoring his voice and composure, and he looks at her with the same gentle expression, insisting that nothing is wrong and telling her how deeply he loves her. Though his words try to calm her, Althia knows the truth and responds with her own confession, saying she loves him just as fiercely and that her happiness has become inseparable from his existence. With a steady voice that hides how much it costs her, she makes her final wish, not to bind him to her or preserve their time together, but to free him completely, asking that he be released from every chain and allowed to return to his own realm. As the wish leaves her lips, the bottle shatters, and time seems to slow as they share their last moments, holding onto each other while they still can. Then, without warning, he fades away, leaving behind an unbearable quiet. Althia carefully gathers every object connected to him, preserving them as if they were fragments of him she can still protect. Years later, she walks through a park and pauses when she notices a couple laughing together, their closeness stirring memories she never truly left behind. In the years since his disappearance, she has transformed grief into creation, writing a book that tells the story of their impossible love, ensuring that even though he is gone, what they shared will never be forgotten. She names the book Years of Longing, a title that quietly carries the weight of separation, love, and everything left unsaid. After lingering in the park, lost in memory, Althia finally stands and prepares to leave, believing the moment has passed like so many others. But just as she takes her first step away, she feels it, a familiar presence she hasn't truly stopped sensing since the day he vanished. When she turns around, he is there, meeting her gaze, and the shock instantly gives way to warmth and relief. Their smiles come easily, not out of surprise, but out of recognition, as if this reunion is part of a rhythm they both understand. This isn't the first time he has found his way back to her, and it's clear it won't be the last. They share a bond that refuses to weaken, a love strong enough to bridge worlds and return again and again. And with that quiet certainty, the story comes to an end here.